Today we're looking at all the changes in patch 13.7 and how they affect our tier list this week. And as usual, we're going to jump straight into it with the top lane. In the God tier, we have Kled and Malphite, and in the S tier, we have Shen, Olaf, Jack, Singed, Riven, Rengar, Pantheon, Camille, Fiora, Akshan, and Darius. Malphite really is beasting it up in that God tier right now, so if you aren't playing him yet, why not? So Riven has already been in a very strong spot recently, and although they are technically nerfing their stance, they are adding 15 ability haste to it now, which as you all should know by now is what really makes Riven tick. This means she can spam her abilities to her heart's content and really does the thing she does best. Riven is already in the S tier and could even get close to the God tier this patch. However, some of her more very difficult matchups are also in those top tiers too, which does at least allow you to have some great champion options to beat her. However, just be extra careful blind picking champions that can struggle against Riven, because if you do go against a good Riven, you might regret it. Olaf is finally getting nerfed this week, but honestly we just don't think these changes are enough to even scratch the surface. It's a good start at least, but all he's getting changed is his passive attack speed and his Q damage, both very marginally. We definitely expect some more nerfs to him over the next few weeks, but for now don't stop banning him anytime soon. Olaf is just so hard to deal with at the moment with his crazy early game damage and his ability to snowball games on his own. So it's going to take a bit more than this to dethrone him. Moving into the jungle now, where we have a ton of champions getting changed. In the God tier though, we still have Jarvan, and in the S tier we have Rengar, Echo, Kayn, Kindred, Fiddlesticks, Udyr, Bel'Veth, Evelynn and Master Yi. Graves is finally receiving some buffs, and it has been a long time coming. Now don't get me wrong, Graves is a difficult champion to balance because he goes through such long periods of domination in the jungle almost every single season. But he has been really underwhelming for a while now. Graves is getting his crit bonus buffed by 10%, plus his ultimate's cooldown is getting lowered at early ranks too. So we've moved Graves up to the A tier this week as we feel like he might come back with a bang. More Rammus nerfs are coming as well, as his success rate right now is still a bit ridiculous at lower ranks. They're nerfing his W's percentage bonus armor by a significant amount, especially at later ranks. However, we aren't going to move Rammus out of the A tier for now though, so let's just see how he looks a week on from now. Sejuani's also receiving some nerfs to her passive against elite monsters and nerfs to her Q and ultimate cooldowns. She has just been such a consistent pick, especially so in pro play for a while now, so it seems that Riot are trying to bring her out of the spotlight. Vi is another champion that's just been performing really well recently, and Riot are nerfing her Q and her E base damage. Now they are nerfing the base damage, but they're actually buffing the AD ratios on it instead, which means full AD Vi could be a little bit scary. Either way though, we aren't going to change Vi's placements this week. Wukong is another extremely popular jungler at the moment, and it's expected to see some nerfs. He's just so versatile and consistent and far too difficult to punish. Riot are nerfing his base AD, his W's cooldown and his E's bonus attack speed, and we've decided that these changes are enough to bring him down from S to A. Lee Sin is also getting nerfed, and they're lowering his base AD and armor. These types of buffs and nerfs seem to happen to Lee Sin multiple times a season, and for now we've moved him down to the A tier too. The nerfs might hurt him harder than we expect though, so make sure you check back next week to find out. Kha'Zix is also getting some pretty interesting changes, nerfing his isolation range and his evolved W slow, but increasing his ultimate's duration. This is going to allow him to weave in and out of fights more consistently with that stealth, but it will make him more punishing in general. If you're looking to learn Kha'Zix and want to try out some builds and runes, then don't forget to click the link in the description and download our desktop app. There you can find everything that you need to know to get started, and you can import it all straight into your client, even in Champion Select. Let's move into that mid lane now, and in the God tier we have Anivia, and in the S tier we have Annie, Vladimir, Cassiopeia, Rumble, Pantheon, Akshan, Echo, Kiana, Katarina and Yasuo. Katarina buffs are coming guys, so get in your bomb shelters, border up the windows and get ready for the apocalypse, because this could be pretty damn terrifying to play against. Riot are adjusting and tweaking her ratios and numbers to prevent players from going down the bruiser route, and instead buffing her AP ratios at the same time. The roaming, snowballing reset queen is going to be incredibly popular again this week, so be ready to ban it or counter it or regret it. Yasuo is also getting buffs to his passive shield and his E. Yasuo is and has always been one of the most popular champions in the whole game, so be prepared to play against a lot of Yasuo mains this patch. Azir has proven incredibly difficult to balance recently, and he's been completely and utterly irrelevant since his last round of changes, especially in solo queue. Riot are buffing his armor, attack speed, passive duration, passive summon range, reducing his mana cost on his W, increasing his W's damage, all at the cost of nerfing his Q's mana cost and range. This boatload of changes could make a pretty big difference to his playstyle, his power spikes and his skill order too. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because this champion is going to need a lot of work to balance properly, as when it's half decent, it's broken in pro play. Annie is finally getting nerfs too, but only really to her E shield and cooldown this week. Annie is going to remain in those top tiers for now, as she's just been stupidly strong this season since her big buffs came in, but these nerfs should help out slightly. Annie still brings a ton of AoE damage and CC consistency, and she's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. Let's jump into that bot lane now and start off with those AD carries. In the God tier we have Jinx, and in the S tier we have Jhin, Xayah, Twitch and Ashe. Yes, Ashe is back in those top tiers after her recent buffs have made a significant difference. She was a bit underrated for a while, but then the support nerfs to her set her back a bit. Then the recent buffs came along and she surprisingly soared straight back up into those top tiers. Ashe has solid poke with those volleys, she has really consistent damage, fantastic kiting, and of course huge utility and CC with her ultimate too. There are not many AD carries that can set up fights, picks, and engage for their team like Ashe can. And even if she is struggling when she's behind, one arrow can still make the difference. Zeri's nerfs this week are fairly expected as she's been living her best life recently. She just scales like a machine and she's so hard to beat once she comes online with those 3 items. This patch they're nerfing her HP growth, her passive shield, steal strength, and her ultimate AD ratio too. And we've moved her down to the A tier as a result. Veigar's back with another round of nerfs and these are some pretty huge changes. His Q and W AP ratios are now far less at low ranks but slightly higher when they're maxed. And his ultimate's AP ratio has been nerfed at early levels too. Now this is actually a fairly decent buff to late game Veigar, as at level 16 he'll be fully primed with more AP ratios than ever before. But it's just going to really hurt his early game by a pretty significant amount. Veigar's in the A tier for now in that bot lane, but let's see how he pans out. Let's finish off with those supports now then. In the S tier we have Senna, Rakan, Blitzcrank, Thresh, Annie, Pyke and Maokai. There has been a slight change to Grievous Wounds where it now applies to targets that completely block the damage with shields. Invulnerable targets are still exempt though. So Thresh has been popping off recently and now he is getting a nerf this patch. His Q cooldown refund on hit is being reduced from 3 seconds to 2 seconds and I don't think too many people will complain about this one. Thresh feels like he can basically constantly hook enemies 24/7 at the moment and honestly it just looks like he's taking his enemies on a dog walk. It is great that you get rewarded for landing those hooks consistently, but recently it was just a little bit too much. These nerfs will make him a little bit easier to deal with, but he's still going to stay in those top tiers anyway. More buffs for Alistar this patch to his armor and his base health. Alistar seems to be getting included in so many of the patch notes this season, but he is still struggling to really take back his place in the support meta. Don't get me wrong though, the good Alistar players that really know how to abuse his strengths of roaming and tanking and comboing enemies are still doing just fine. But for the general player base, there's just way too many better options right now. And let's see if these simple changes can help him out. Maokai support is still a very strong pick, and people have somewhat forgotten about him recently. With those hyper carries like Jinx running around the rift, Maokai has the ability to get on top of her with ease and shut her down very quickly. He also still offers great utility and crowd control throughout games, and if you can abuse his ability to destroy certain lanes early on, you'll quickly understand why he's in the S tier. And on that note, that's going to bring us to the end of our patch 13.7 tier list video. All the best in your solo queue games this patch guys, and don't forget to download our desktop app to help you improve your gameplay with builds, runes, combos, matchups and even in-game highlights too. Thanks everyone for watching and as always, take care.